Have you ever had something important to say, but the words didn't come out right? Maybe your voice shook. Maybe you over-explained. Or maybe you said nothing at all. In a world where everyone's talking, but few are truly communicating, learning to speak clearly and confidently is a rare and valuable skill. And some of the best teachers of this skill lived over 2,000 years ago, the Stoic philosophers. They understood something we often forget: clear speech begins with a clear mind. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." Before we speak, we must first examine our thoughts. What are we trying to say? Why does it matter? Is it helpful? Is it kind? By slowing down and becoming intentional with our thinking, our words become more precise, more powerful, and less reactive. Clarity isn't about using big words. It's about saying the right ones. Another powerful Stoic insight: don't cling to the outcome. Epictetus reminded us that some things are in our control, and some things are not. How people respond to your words, not your responsibility. Your job is to speak with honesty and composure, not to impress or persuade everyone. When you speak with no attachment to praise or rejection, you speak freely, boldly, authentically. The Stoics also believed in restraint. Seneca wrote, "Speech, if it is to be useful, must be brief." That doesn't mean you stay silent. It means you speak purposefully. Use fewer words, but say more. Get to the point. Let go of filler, gossip, and noise. Bold speech doesn't mean louder speech. It means cleaner speech. Controlled. Thoughtful. And it's not just about the words you say, it's how you say them. Your tone and delivery matter. A calm voice carries further than a loud one. In the heat of conflict or emotion, it's tempting to raise your voice or speak fast. But that's exactly when you should slow down. Take a breath. Center yourself. Then speak with calm strength. Let your tone reflect inner discipline, not outer chaos. And here's something we often overlook: the power of listening. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once said we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason: to listen more and speak less. When you listen first, your words become sharper. You understand the moment. You respond, instead of reacting. People who listen well tend to speak better, because they're tuned in, not just waiting to speak next. To build real confidence, you don't need a stage. You need practice. In private. Try this simple habit: write 1 paragraph a day about something you care about. Read it out loud. Refine it. Record yourself. Listen back. Do this daily. Over time, your mind becomes more ordered, your delivery more natural, and your words more effective. You're not just learning to speak, you're training to think. The Stoics also saw silence as a tool. A moment of pause in a conversation can be more powerful than 100 rushed words. Don't fear silence. Use it. A thoughtful pause after a sentence adds weight. It gives your listener time to absorb what was said. Let your silence do the heavy lifting. Let it show you're grounded, not grasping. Ego often ruins communication. The urge to be right, to dominate, to be admired. These impulses interfere with connection. The Stoic speaker isn't driven by ego, they're driven by clarity and service. They speak not to show off, but to offer something useful. Drop the need to impress, and ironically, you'll become more impressive. Before speaking, always ask yourself, is this adding value? Or am I just adding noise? Choose words that clarify, uplift, or guide. Don't speak just to fill the air. Speak because your words matter, because you've chosen them with care. Building this ability doesn't happen by accident. It comes from repetition. Repeating calm responses. Repeating intentional pauses. Repeating the act of thinking before you speak. Repetition builds reputation. And reputation begins with how you use your voice. Of course, this isn't easy. Especially in moments of discomfort, when all eyes are on you, or when conflict arises. But the Stoics welcomed discomfort as training. Every hard conversation, every nervous moment is an opportunity to get better. Don't run from the nerves. Let them sharpen you. Let them shape you into someone who speaks not just with confidence, but with purpose. And above all, stay present. When your mind is lost in fear, or obsessing over what to say next, your words lose their power. Presence brings coherence. It brings rhythm. It brings honesty. A present mind produces a strong voice. A wandering mind produces weak words. So if you want to speak clearly and boldly, don't just work on your voice. Work on your presence, your stillness, your values. Because in the end, speaking well isn't about technique, it's about integrity. It's about embodying what you say, and saying only what's worth hearing. The Stoics didn't just talk about wisdom. They lived it. And when they did speak, people listened. You can do the same. Not by trying to sound smart, but by striving to be sincere. Not by speaking louder, but by thinking deeper. Clarity, composure, courage. These are the traits of the Stoic speaker, and they can be yours one word at a time. So now you may be asking, where do I begin? The answer is simple but not easy. Start with awareness. Catch yourself when you ramble. Notice when you speak just to fill silence. Be mindful of how your tone shifts when you're anxious, irritated, or seeking approval. Self-awareness is the foundation of all clear communication. Without it, your words drift. With it, your voice becomes anchored. Then, embrace the pause. Most people fear it. But you can use it. In that pause, there is power. A moment to collect your thoughts. A breath to calm your emotions. A space to make sure you mean what you say before you say it. With practice, the pause becomes your ally. It makes your words land more deeply. It makes you appear more thoughtful, more in control, more trustworthy. Next, begin stripping away the unnecessary. Remove the fluff, the filler, the fear of being misunderstood that leads to over-explaining. Ask yourself, how would I say this if I had only one sentence? You'll be amazed at how much more impactful your words become when you speak as if they mattered. Because they do. Every time you speak, you shape your image. You influence those around you. You reveal what you value, what you fear, and what you stand for. That's why the Stoics spoke with such care and often with such brevity. They didn't rush. They didn't perform. They simply spoke with honesty, clarity, and calm. And the world listened, not because their voices were loud, but because they were true. You don't need to speak more to be more heard. You don't need to be louder to be more respected. You simply need to be sincere, grounded, and intentional. You might stumble in the beginning. You might feel awkward. You might feel vulnerable when your words don't come out perfectly. That's okay. Growth isn't clean. It's not always graceful. But every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you speak with intention instead of impulse, every time you listen first and speak second, you become someone others trust, someone others follow, someone whose voice matters. Not because you shouted, not because you demanded, but because you earned it, through presence, patience, and purpose. So, speak less to say more. Speak slowly to be heard. Speak truthfully, even if your voice shakes. And above all, speak as someone who has nothing to prove, but everything to offer. That's what Stoicism teaches us. That true power in communication doesn't come from the outside. It comes from within. It's not about controlling the room. It's about mastering yourself. And once you've done that, you'll never struggle to be heard again. Because when you speak with inner stillness, outer confidence follows. And that's when your voice becomes unforgettable. So the next time you speak, in a meeting, in a conversation, or even just to yourself, take a breath. Choose your words. And speak like someone who knows the value of silence and the weight of truth. Because that is how you communicate clearly and boldly. The Stoic Way. Now let's bring all of this into the real world. How does Stoic communication show up in everyday life? Let's start with social situations, casual conversations, small talk, daily interactions. It's easy to slip into autopilot here. We talk to be polite. We speak to avoid silence. We nod and smile but don't really engage. But the Stoic communicator doesn't drift, they direct. When you're with someone, be with them. Ask a question that matters. Pause before answering. Listen fully, not just with your ears, but with your full attention. People can feel when they're truly being heard. And people trust those who make them feel understood. So don't focus on what to say next. Focus on being present. Then there's leadership in the workplace, in your family, in your community. Leaders are often tempted to speak more, not less. To fill every meeting, dominate every room, explain everything in detail. But the strongest leaders speak less and mean more. They ask thoughtful questions. They choose clarity over complexity. They don't speak to be admired, they speak to serve. And when conflict arises, they don't shout louder, they stand quieter. That's when Stoicism truly shines. Imagine you're in an argument. Your instinct wants to defend. Correct. Raise your voice. Prove your point. But the Stoic response? First, pause. Breathe. Step outside your ego. Then, speak calmly. Use words that clarify, not condemn. Say only what must be said, nothing more. This doesn't make you weak. It makes you unshakable. Because anyone can yell. Anyone can argue. But it takes discipline to speak with reason when emotions are high. That's power. Now consider your internal voice, the one no one else hears. The Stoics taught that our inner dialogue shapes how we speak to the world. If your self-talk is scattered, critical, or chaotic, your outer communication will reflect that. So begin there. When you catch your mind racing, slow it down. When you hear harsh thoughts, challenge them. When you feel unsure, anchor yourself in reason. Ask, what would a wise person say to themselves right now? Then say it, gently, clearly, and with courage. Because the way you speak to yourself becomes the way you speak to others. And over time, this quiet discipline becomes your character. You see, being articulate isn't about having perfect grammar or a deep vocabulary. It's about presence, integrity, simplicity. It's about knowing your truth and speaking it without fear. You don't need to memorize quotes or rehearse scripts. You just need to practice presence. You need to practice listening. You need to practice saying less and meaning more. Every conversation is a chance to improve. Even a single sentence can be a turning point for you or someone else. So don't aim to impress. Aim to express. Calmly, clearly, confidently. That's how your voice begins to carry weight, not because it's louder, but because it's real. And if you stay on this path, something incredible begins to happen. You start to become known, not for being flashy, but for being solid. Not for how much you say, but for how deeply you speak. People turn to you not for noise, but for clarity. Because in a world full of talkers, your silence speaks. Your words land. Your voice calms. And that is the voice of a Stoic. Now let's talk about pressure. It's easy to speak clearly when you're alone. When the stakes are low. When no one is watching. But what about when you're under pressure? In a meeting. On a stage. During an argument. When someone challenges you. When your voice starts to shake and your heart starts to race. This is where most people fall apart. But for the Stoic, this is the training ground. This is where calm becomes a choice. When the world rushes, you slow down. When others raise their voices, you lower yours. When you're challenged, you don't react, you respond. A deep breath can be your armor. A pause can be your shield. A short, thoughtful answer can speak louder than a long, emotional one. In high-pressure moments, you don't need more words, you need more control. And that control doesn't come from trying harder. It comes from letting go of fear, of pride, of the need to win. Because true strength in speech isn't about overpowering the room. It's about standing in silence until you know what needs to be said and nothing more. Now what about dealing with difficult people? People who interrupt. People who misinterpret your words. People who try to bait you into arguments or play status games. It's tempting to meet their energy, to defend yourself, to talk over them. But that only pulls you down to their level. The Stoic approach is different. You observe, without absorbing. You hold your posture. You keep your tone steady. You let them flail, while you remain anchored. Say only what's useful, what's true, what's necessary, and then let silence do the rest. Because when you don't react, you shift the dynamic. You set a different rhythm. You teach others how to speak to you by the way you speak to them. And here's something else the Stoics understood: leadership isn't volume. It's vision. If you're in a position of influence as a manager, parent, creator, teacher, your voice shapes others. So how do you lead without dominating? You listen more than you speak. You ask better questions than you give commands. You admit when you don't know. And when you do speak, you speak with precision. A good leader doesn't flood the room with opinions. They open space, clarify direction, offer quiet strength. Their words don't crush, they carry. Their voice doesn't overpower, it guides. And that kind of voice? It's built in silence, in restraint, in reflection. You begin to realize that being articulate isn't about talking better. It's about thinking better, and feeling less controlled by those thoughts. That's why Stoicism is so powerful, because it gives you command over the only thing that truly matters in communication: yourself. When your mind is quiet, your voice is clean. When your ego is silent, your message is strong. When your emotions are steady, your words are sharp. This is what gives your communication power. Not perfection, not polish, but presence. Most people will keep chasing technique, scripts, hacks, performance tricks. But you're building something deeper. You're creating the kind of voice that doesn't just sound good, it feels real. The kind of voice people trust. The kind of voice people follow. The kind of voice that speaks less, but means more. Because once you learn to master yourself, once you've trained your mind, once your words are aligned with your values, you won't need to convince anyone of anything. You'll simply speak and people will listen. Not because you're trying to be powerful, but because you already are. Let's talk now about personal relationships. Because if we're honest, this is where communication gets hardest. It's easy to sound wise in a quiet room, or on a stage, or in a journal. But when you're face to face with someone you love, when emotions run high, when words have weight and silence feels sharp, that's when real composure is tested. In a relationship, romantic, familial, or close friendship, your words can either build safety or break it. They can invite connection or trigger defense. They can bring peace or pour fuel on fire. And the difference is rarely about what you say. It's about how you say it and when. The Stoics taught us not to speak from anger. Not because anger is evil, but because it clouds reason. It makes us say things we don't mean. Loud things, sharp things, unnecessary things. So when tension rises, slow down. Breathe. Don't rush to speak. Don't try to win. Instead, try to understand. Ask yourself, what is actually needed here? Do they need clarity? Do they need support? Or do they just need to be heard? Because sometimes the most articulate thing you can do is just listen. Fully. Without interrupting. Without fixing. And when it is time to speak, do it gently. Not passively. Gently. Calm doesn't mean weak. It means measured. It means, I'm aware of how much weight my words carry, and I'm choosing to use them carefully. This is how trust is built, not through volume, but through presence. Now, what about social anxiety? That pressure in your chest before you speak. The racing thoughts. The self-doubt. The fear of looking foolish. Of being misunderstood. Of not being enough. It's more common than most people admit. But Stoicism has something powerful to offer here, too. It teaches us to separate what we can control from what we can't. You can't control how others perceive you. You can't control if they like you. You can't control every reaction to your words. But you can control how you show up. You can control your breath, your preparation, your posture, your effort to be clear and calm, even when your heart pounds. You can also reframe the moment. This is not a test. This is training. Every time you speak, even with trembling, you build strength. Not the kind that shouts. The kind that endures. Social confidence doesn't come from being loud. It comes from practicing courage, quietly, consistently. Each time you speak honestly, without performing or pretending, you grow more grounded. And eventually, something shifts. You stop trying to impress. You start trying to connect. And in doing that, you actually become far more impactful. Because at the core of all Stoic communication is this idea. You don't speak to manipulate. You speak to reveal. Not to dominate the space, but to honor it. Not to inflate your ego, but to express your essence. And that kind of speaking, that kind of voice, is rare. It doesn't seek attention. It draws it naturally. Because people can feel the difference. They can feel when your words come from presence, from stillness, from something deeper than impulse or insecurity. That's what Stoic speech gives you. Not a performance, but peace. Let's talk now about negotiation. Most people think negotiation is about talking others into something. Convincing, pushing, playing games. But that's not the Stoic way. The Stoic sees negotiation as something else entirely, not a battle, but a dialogue. A chance to understand the other side, clarify your own needs, and move toward mutual truth. The most powerful negotiators are rarely the loudest. They don't rush. They don't bluff. They don't posture. They listen carefully. They speak slowly. They create space for clarity to emerge, instead of forcing it. Because they're not afraid of silence. They're not addicted to approval. They're not trying to win, they're trying to be effective. And that's what makes their words land with weight. They can say less, and still move the conversation forward. They stay rooted in facts, not emotion. In clarity, not control. So if you want to speak with quiet power in negotiation, remember, the Stoic doesn't argue, they observe. They ask clear questions. They define terms. They say no with calm authority. And when necessary, they walk away without drama. Because dignity is never for sale. Now, let's move into another fear that many share, public speaking. That stage. That spotlight. That moment where all eyes are on you. Your hands shake. Your mind blanks. Your throat tightens. But here's the truth, everyone feels that at some point. Even the best speakers. Even those who seem fearless. The difference is, Stoics don't fight the nerves, they use them. They ground themselves in purpose, not performance. They remind themselves, I'm not here to be admired. I'm here to speak truth. To serve. To share. And when you make that mental shift, the fear shrinks. Because your focus shifts away from you, and toward the message. Speak as if the idea matters more than the applause. Because it does. Even if your voice shakes, even if your hands tremble, if your words are honest, they will reach people. And that's what Stoicism teaches us. Don't chase approval. Chase clarity. Chase impact. Chase alignment with your highest self. Then, you'll speak with a presence no audience can ignore. Now let's talk about one final challenge, criticism. No matter how calmly you speak, someone, somewhere, won't like it. You'll be misunderstood, questioned, judged, mocked. So what then? The Stoic answer is simple and timeless. Don't take it personally. Take it usefully. Ask, is there any truth in this? If yes, good. Use it. Grow. If not, let it go. Don't carry it. Because not all criticism is created equal. Some people offer it with care, others with ego. Your job is not to absorb everything. Your job is to filter what strengthens you and discard what weakens you. Marcus Aurelius once said, choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. And that applies to speech, too. Choose not to be shaken. Choose not to over-defend. Choose not to respond to every jab. Because when you don't react to every opinion, your voice becomes unshakable. That kind of quiet control? It's rare, but it's worth the discipline. So remember, speak with presence, not pressure. Speak with clarity, not clutter. Speak with calm, not control. Whether you're in a negotiation, on a stage, or facing criticism, your voice will reflect the state of your mind. And if your mind is rooted in reason, in values, in truth, your voice will carry. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. And that is what people remember. So now you've seen it all come together. Speaking clearly. Speaking boldly. Speaking with purpose and peace. And not because you're louder. Not because you've memorized scripts or copied someone else's style. But because you've remembered something deeper. That your voice is not just a tool. It's a reflection of your mind. Of your values. Of your presence. And when you ground yourself in the teachings of Stoicism, you no longer speak from fear. You no longer speak from ego. You speak from stillness. You speak because something needs to be said, not just to fill space, not to impress, not to win. And this is where your power truly lives. In the space between your thoughts, where you choose your words. In the pause before your response, where wisdom enters. In the quiet between moments, where your presence speaks louder than sound. So whether you're standing in a crowd, or speaking to one person you love, or simply thinking to yourself late at night, ask yourself, are my words helping? Are they healing? Are they necessary? And if the answer is yes, speak them, clearly and calmly. If not, hold them. Let the silence speak instead. Because sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. And sometimes the simplest words, spoken with clarity, with conviction, with stillness, can echo longer than 1,000 empty sentences. That is the art of Stoic speech. Not flashy, not loud, but deeply felt, and fully true. So speak as a Stoic, with awareness, with integrity, with restraint. Let your voice become not a performance but a presence. And slowly, quietly, your words will begin to change things, in the room, in the world, and most of all, in you. Thank you for watching. Keep speaking less, and meaning more. Keep choosing stillness over noise. And remember, your voice is strongest when it comes from silence.